Possibly the most consequential and well-studied historical events in human history would be the transition of the Roman state from republic to empire. This was carried out by Julius Caesar and later by Octavian, also named Julius Caesar. It involved the usurpation and replacement of the Senate, consulship, Pontifex Maximus, and basically all levers of power in the Eternal City. Caesar did this largely in response to the civil war that broke out near the end of his 10-year term as proconsul, along with the consequences that followed. I will try to avoid giving a history lesson on the era of turmoil as much as possible, to the relief or frustration of the audience. Another historical event that is likely even more studied and even more consequential would happen during or in rapid succession of these events. We are, of course, talking about the birth, rise, crucifixion, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It is meant to analyze these two events and is coming from a relative layman, just keep in mind. On January 1st of the year 42 BC, the Senate and people of Rome declared Julius Caesar a god, erecting a temple on the site of his funeral pyre. Caesar was assassinated on March 15th of 44 BC by a large group of senators who claimed to be the legitimate government of Rome. Caesar had turned a republic governed by laws and a senate into a monarchy in all but name. The fact that a bipartisan group of senators who should have and would have wielded the power in a pre-Caesar Rome were the ones to kill him makes this a quasi-legal act. They did this during a Senate meeting, no less. However, in the years that followed, it would be Caesar's lieutenants, not his assassins and the Senate, who would become the heirs to his extra-legal authority. This transfer of his authoritarian power to other unconstrained men would forever eliminate the Senate as the center of Roman government. Caesar died without any children or a clear successor to his political movement. It was stipulated in his will that he would posthumously adopt his grandnephew, Octavian, as his son and heir. This would bestow upon him his father's name of Julius Caesar. Despite not being his actual son, he was hailed as the new Caesar, which would later provide a divine lineage to the god Julius Caesar. In the coming decade, Octavian would oust all of his political opponents and become the unrivaled first man of Rome. This began the Julio-Claudii dynasty that would be the basis for Roman emperor's legitimacy going forward. Jesus of Nazareth was a Jewish man born in modern northern Israel. As he preached, he amassed a substantial following and was known for his forgiveness and lack of sin. He was viewed as a prophet, if not a messiah. He led a religious and political movement that put him at odds with the Roman government in power. Pontius Pilate, the prefect of Judea, sentenced Jesus to death by crucifixion to end his perceived threat. It is said that on the third day after his death, Jesus became resurrected. He was perceived and portrayed as a god forever after by his disciples, becoming the cornerstone of the world's largest religion today. Jesus was assassinated by the legitimate Roman government, making this a legal act. However, his disciples would spread his teachings and create a religious movement that would only multiply in momentum. He began to be seen as a direct son of God rather than a mere mortal, and intertwined with God in a way other men were not. Within a relatively short amount of time, Christianity would become the dominant religion in the Roman Empire, and the emperors themselves would be subscribed to Jesus' divinity. The status of Jesus' relationship to God the Father, however, would remain in debate for centuries to come. The quasi-divine status of the Roman emperors and of Julius Caesar is like, though not the same as, the relationship between Jesus and the Father. Julius Caesar was proclaimed as a god in death, but this was in the pagan context of the Roman gods. Godship ranged in Roman society, where Jupiter Optimus Maximus was a god of the highest order, but other gods existed as well. Where Caesar and his heirs would lie on this order of deities likely ranged based on personal perception. This allows for a huge range in the divine status of Caesar versus the other gods and versus his own heirs. Whether his son, Octavian, was of divine nature, and to what degree, is at the center of this question. Similarly, in the early days of Christianity, the relationship between the Son and the Father was largely contested. By 325 AD, a meeting, called the Council of Nicaea, was held due to a large divide in the churches of the empire. This culminated in a movement called Arianism. The debate centered around whether Jesus was, in English, of the same substance as God the Father. Emperor Constantine I and the council would conclude that Christ was divine and was not created by God, but rather was God. You can only imagine that similar debates took place in private around the Roman Empire, only years earlier, and maybe continuously, regarding Caesar, the other emperors, and their divine relation to the other gods. Another relevant group is the status of the papacy. The Pope, as the highest ranking member of the Church, is supposed to have the most direct connection with God. I believe it is unclear how direct this connection is in comparison with everyday man. The Pope, or Bishop of Rome in antiquity, would likely have been subservient in holiness to the Roman emperors of the time. An example of this would be when General Belisarius immediately removed the Ostrogothic Pope in favor of a Roman upon seizing the city in 536 AD as he marched through Italy. He had been the head of the Roman religion when he assumed power, through the position of Pontifex Maximus, for which he was elected long before his domination of Roman politics. This would be absorbed into the emperorship by Octavian, making the emperor the de facto head of religion going forward. This, similarly to the divine question surrounding Roman emperors versus Caesar, puts into question the divine status of the Pope versus Jesus. Throughout history, before and after these events, we see many kings or emperors or religious leaders claim divine right to rule. These situations, however, are vastly different, primarily due to the scale in which they occurred. See the most consequential and well-studied historical events in human history. The Roman Empire and Christianity are the foundation of Western society as we know it today. Despite many other civilizations having risen and fallen by this time, the Roman Republic was the first great power to have a society based on rule of law, peaceful means to power, and meritocracy. It had many faults, but compared to the governments that predated the Republic, it was possibly the world's greatest innovation. Fallout from the loss of this institution was likely more significant than should the United States fall to tyranny today. This is the type of environment that can spark a new religion, preaching a different sort of divinity, though having many of similar characteristics for people to latch onto. In both of these situations, we see a man being posthumously proclaimed as God. We see a political institution that believes it is maintaining or restoring the status quo, only to see the consequences be the annihilation of what they sought to protect. In Rome, it was the Senate and Republic. In Judea, it was Roman hegemony. We see uncertainty surrounding the divineness of a man relative to the other higher powers. We see heirs of the tradition try to maintain their divine line to the gods. We see a father who is undeniably a god, and a son whose relationship to the father and his divinity is open to interpretation. Finally, we see the creation of institutions that lasted thousands of years occur only within a 50-year time frame, bearing many divine similarities. Whether by coincidence or not, these two divine father and son situations are the backbone of the world today. It is my belief that, at least in part, the first was a cause of the second.